Good morning. I'm Saundra Amsden. I am a bigot and a racist. I have biases and I believe stereotypes. And I am in a lifelong process of recovery. Now, I'm a fourth generation Montanan, born in Bozeman, lived the first 28 years of my life here in the state. And it's a great place to grow up. The mountains and the lakes and streams, open places to run. It's just wonderful. I loved it. So many places, hiking and camping. And if you look at our state flag, you can see symbolized on this flag why I love this place. Those mountains in the background and that lake, open space to run. You also see the words oro y plata, gold and silver. Those are two very important and precious metals to us. And our state has a foundation in these metals. The gold rush in Helena built the city that we now call our capital. And copper, another very important metal with the Butte mining industry. And even Hamilton here, its foundation is in providing wood products for the processing of those ores in Butte. But these metals by themselves are soft and malleable, easily manipulated by external forces, somebody with a hammer that wants to change them into something else or damage them. Similarly, if our communities are very homogeneous, we too are very soft and malleable, easily influenced by those outside forces, by the people we view as having knowledge and expertise in areas that maybe we don't, people that look like us. So what is diversity? Well, sometimes we think of diversity as that checklist on the census form. I'm a white, non-Hispanic female over the age of 61. And I'd say that tells you absolutely nothing about me. Diversity doesn't just encompass your race or the color of your skin. Now, growing up in Montana, my exposure to cultures other than my own were on the one channel we got on that black and white television, the movies that did come to town, and the adults around us. And I remember an adult telling a group of us one time that black people can't swim because their body mass is too dense, denser than whites, so they sink. He went on to explain, this is why you don't see black people in the Olympics. They sink, they can't swim. We believed him. I would later find out that has no basis in truth. There's a lot of reasons people can't swim, primarily if they don't have the resources, a swimming pool, a lake, or maybe an instructor to teach them how to swim. In high school, we had a class we called special ed back in the day. There was a young boy in that class who was confined to a wheelchair. Great deal of difficulty communicating. He had cerebral palsy. And I, like so many people at that time, made the assumption that he's disabled on the outside, he's disabled on the inside. He does not have the capacity to learn, so he belongs in that class. To this day, I don't know anything else about this young boy other than seeing him occasionally in the lunchroom when we were in high school. So I don't know what happened to him. But I would become very disabused of this notion of judging people on their external physical attributes and making assumptions about their internal abilities. When I attended college, I was asked to take notes for two individuals in my classes in my computer science programming. One was blind, one had cerebral palsy, as it turned out. I would have assumed at that point that these two people could not be successful in college because the blind guy, he can't read the text, he can't see what the instructor's writing on the board, so how is he supposed to learn? The other one, well, he had cerebral palsy, so we already know what I thought about that. These were two very intelligent, high-achieving students. And I have to say, I am so happy I was able to provide some assistance in them achieving their educational goals. And in the process of doing that, they helped me achieve mine. It was a mutual benefit. Now, upon completion of my college time, I was commissioned an officer in the United States Navy. And for the first time in my life, I'm going to be exposed to cultures other than white, rural America. I'm going to leave Montana. My first duty station was Corpus Christi, Texas. I am working directly with African American, Hispanic, and Filipinos in a military and civilian capacity. These people are nothing like the cruel stereotypes and the crude jokes that we told each other when I was growing up. These are intelligent, hardworking people. And even more so, they took time out of their busy day to teach me how to be a better naval officer. And I will always be grateful to these people for the work they put into me. They were wonderful, wonderful people. Now, I was also at VF 126, Fighting Bandit Squadron out of Naval Air Station Miramar. And yes, that's me. I logged 3 hours in a fighter jet. And I threw up for half of each one. But one of my jobs there was to do a space inspection. Primary purpose of this is to find safety violations because we want to keep our people safe, free of accidents, and our equipment in good working order. Well, I walk into a space we call the line shack, and up on the walls are pictures of very scantily clad women. I want you to think about that Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition. And I know many of you just had a picture in your mind. I told that petty officer to get those off the walls and get rid of them. I would be back to re-inspect in the next couple of days, and I'd better not find them even tucked away in drawers. He did so. Over the next couple of weeks, I had people come up to me, airmen and petty officers ranging in age from 18 to 30, saying, thank you for making them take those down. But what was surprising was they were all men. And some of those men explained, we were afraid to speak up, despite the fact that we find them offensive and degrading, because we're going to be labeled the faggot. And then the harassment would be never-ending and merciless. So I learned that sometimes it takes someone new with the authority to do so to stand up and speak for those people in that space that don't feel they have a voice out of fear of reprisals and retribution. So these stories are just examples of how I learned about the differences and diversity that was out there in the world. Diversity is how we differ. It's not just about our race or our skin color. It can be generational differences, socioeconomic classes, physical attributes, your gender, sexual orientation. The list is endless on the differences. Now, if we are around people that do not look, act, or dress like us, or like our stereotypes say they should, it can make us very uncomfortable and insecure. So we like to box people in, label them. That redhead over there, I bet she's got a volatile personality. And have you ever noticed it's only the redheaded women that have volatile personalities? That thick Southern accent, I bet he doesn't have much of an education. Guy in the pink outfit over there, bet he's gay. Those young people are lazy and entitled. And I have to admit, I am guilty of doing this. I occasionally, probably more than occasionally, look at somebody that I've never even met before and make a judgment about them based on their external appearances. But it becomes incumbent upon me to step across a barrier that I created to get to know that person for who they really are, to have a conversation, to make a new friend. When I retired from the Navy, I moved back to the Bitterroot Valley, where I graduated from high school. For a lot of reasons, but one of them is you can see it right here in the picture, our mountains and the access to them. It's such a beautiful place to be. And when I came back, I wanted to get involved in our community. So I joined several service organizations because I wanted to meet people, but I also wanted to do what I could to maybe make things a little better in our community, help some people if I could. And I hope I've accomplished some of that. One of the organizations I joined was PFLAG, Parents, Friends, and Families of Lesbians and Gays. And I found myself on the other side of that diversity line. As an officer in the local chapter, I attended several school board meetings. They were discussing the policy changes to their bullying and employment discrimination practices. And we wanted them to add the language, gender identity and expression and sexual orientation to why you can't bully and why you can't discriminate. Now, I did not expect to make a lot of traction, and I didn't, but we wanted to be heard. But boy, was I taken back by the level of vitriol that was in that room. My mother attended the first meeting with me because she wanted to be supportive. She did not go to the second one. She was so uncomfortable. After I spoke the first time, I sat down. 2 men behind me were chatting, whispering loudly, and one finally says to the other, "She should be put to death." And I'm assuming he was talking about me. Did not talk to him or confront him. And it got worse. Now we have these stereotyping comments about gays and transgender children, the stories about the bathroom fears. I mean, it was just so surprising. Pedophiles. And then it really went off the rails. So after the end of this meeting, there were people standing around whispering and talking to each other, giving me dirty looks and pointing at me. I was uncomfortable. And to speak, you have to give your full name. Well, a name like mine, it makes it real easy for people in that room or who read the newspaper article that came out a couple days later to find me and where I live in this community. I'm going to tell you, as he said, I am a Navy veteran and I spent a year in Iraq, and I know what PTSD is. I've had it. To this day, I do not like the 4th of July and New Year's Eve. It's uncomfortable and it's unnerving. So I would find myself, when I was driving home, getting very tense and nervous, gripping that steering wheel really tight, that tingling in your finger from the adrenaline rush, as I drive over this little rise and I can see my house kind of off in the distance, wondering, has it been vandalized? Or is there somebody there waiting for me? I am happy to say those things did not happen. But I was scared and I felt very alone and isolated for that period of time. It went on for 6 months, or 6 weeks to 2 months. But I do have to tell you, there were people in the community that came up to me and said, "Thank you for standing up and speaking out. We have kids in the LGBTQ community in these schools, and we want to say something, but we're afraid that our children will suffer if we speak up." So again, it takes somebody new, maybe not knowing the community as well as I did, to speak up and say something to represent those who don't feel they have a voice. So we so often have these groups, minorities, people of difference, that are afraid to stand up and speak out for fear of being isolated, targeted, and the retribution that can happen to them. But we need their ideas. Their new ideas can help us solve our problems in our community, ways we never thought of solving them. I want you to think about a group of well-meaning people who get together and they're going to solve handicap access for wheelchairs and visually impaired. Everybody in the room that's doing this walks on 2 feet and has 20/20 vision. You think they're going to come up with the best solutions? They might come up with a few, but they're going to miss a lot because they didn't invite all the right people to the party. They need to invite a cross-section of our community to discuss this, to come up with the better ideas. And there have been a number of studies that have shown when you have a diverse group of people get together to solve problems, they do a better job and they do it quicker. And the Harvard Business Review took a whole bunch of these studies together, looked at them, and they found some common factors. These diverse groups can focus on the facts much better. They analyze those facts more carefully, and their solutions are much more innovative. So we need this cross-section of people to come together to solve our problems. So how do we learn? Well, diversity alone is not the answer. We need inclusion, because a diverse community that does not interact brings fear and distrust. So if diversity is inviting everyone to the party, inclusion is the act of talking with everyone at that party. And you notice I said the word with, not to, because there's a difference. So there's things you can do. You can go Google this thing, find all kinds of things that you can do. But a few things I thought up was start a podcast group, a book club, a movie group. Read, listen, and watch material that is written, produced, directed, acted by people who do not come from your cultural background. Maybe things that make you uncomfortable, and talk about them. Actively challenge people when they bring up racist tropes and stereotypes and those nasty little jokes. Don't chuckle along nervously. Tell them you didn't like that. It made you uncomfortable. Get to know the legislation in your local, state, and federal level, and know how it impacts these groups in your community. Talk to the people it's going to impact. Is it positive? Is it negative? And I say if you're in a leadership position, you have a responsibility to stand up for those people in your community that do not have a voice. Let them be heard. and give them power. And the next time you meet someone new, don't box them in. Think about how you can get to know that person and see the world through their eyes. And maybe when they're ready, they can see it through yours. Make a new friend. So I want to take you back to our state flag. And those words, oro y plata, it's Spanish for gold and silver. Do you know we have the only state flag with Spanish on it? So these metals by themselves, as I said, are very soft and malleable. I want you to think about that ring that you have on your finger, that gold ring. It's beautiful. But if it was pure gold, you could reach down and you could squeeze that ring and damage it and turn it into something else, lose its functionality. It's still gold, but it's lost something. And our communities are like that too. We need diversity and inclusion to create a stronger community. I want to leave you with a quote, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to get it wrong, from a very long dead French philosopher named Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. He who is different from me does not impoverish me, he enriches me. Thank you.